Nestled in this valley just outside of Orange, today I'm visiting one of the oldest family-owned wineries in the region. I'm Madeleine, and this is the Cellar Door, Australia. Today we journey to the picturesque town of Orange, just under 4 hours west of Sydney, to visit a cold climate wine region on the rise. Here I'm dropping into one of the oldest family-owned wineries in the area, the renowned Highland Heritage. And to get the lowdown on what it takes to produce excellent wines here, I'm catching up with head winemaker and owner Rex DeQuino. So beautiful scenery coupled with a beautiful wine. What are we drinking?
This is the Mount Canoble Sauvignon Blanc, the black label. So made fresh, the grapes are grown here. There's 3 different sections of Sauvignon Blanc in the vineyard. We pick the Sauvignon Blanc at different times because they have different characters, and then once the wine's made, we then blend them to make this style of wine.
It smells amazing.
So you can smell grassy. The Sauvignon Blanc has a grassy character and a slightly smoky character. And as it ages, it gets more complex. So we're famous, in Australia, you know about the New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs from Marlborough. They have a particular style that people know. We have our own style. So the thing about Orange is that we're a food bowl. So here, before grapes came along, we've still got them. We've got stone fruits, cherries, we've got grazing. They don't grow oranges in Orange, so that's one myth. It's too cold. But it's a genuine food bowl. So what we grow here is very good quality. Unlike some other regions in Australia where they bring the wine in. But we grow we grow in Orange, we sell in Orange, and that's the quality we produce. And you won't get a bad wine in Orange. And we're one of the first vineyards as you come from Sydney on the right-hand side. And we've been here since 1990. So family business, started with my grandfather in Orange in 1946. He came to Australia in 1919 as a migrant, following the migrants to Australia, and then when he came to Orange over the mountains, again he followed the migration of the migrants over the mountains to make wine for the migrants. So he came in 46, my mother came out in the same year. My mother cried for a year. If you talk to my mother, she cried for a year.
That's not the final review though, right?
But she came good.
Yeah.
And she's still here. Like my mother's 88. We do a function once a year called Nonna's Long Lunch, and my mother, actually it's her menu. She comes and helps cook. At 88, she's quite amazing for her age, really. So with a bit of luck, I'll have my mother's genetics. My grandfather lived to 100, nearly 101. So looking good. I'm still healthy, fresh air.
Just like some good wine.
Great countryside, a bit of good wine.
Well aged.
A bit of nice salami and cheese.
Yeah.
Good Italian, Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
And so far, so good.
Rex took over his family business at the age of 29 and shortly after purchased what's now known as Highland Heritage. We popped inside the Cellar Door to find out more about its history. So Rex, we're here in the beautiful Cellar Door. How long have you been operating out of here?
So Highland Heritage was established in Orange in the late 80s, about 86, and we bought the vineyard in 1991. And prior to that, my grandfather came here in 1946, and we call ourselves the original winemaking family of Orange. Now the new era of winemaking in Australia was probably around the late 70s, early 80s, when we really started getting on the world stage. So I graduated from Roseworthy College in 1981, a young winemaker, fresh, ready to go, came back into the family business in the early 80s and started growing the family business. So my passion was wine. Yeah. So we had a small vineyard, small business, winemaking. My grandfather produced 6 barrels in his first year in 1946, and the business just evolved from there. So we were fairly small up until about the 70s, and then my father came on board with my grandfather when he retired. Then my father had a stroke in 88, so I came on board in 1988 from a cellar hand to a business manager. So that was a really intense time in my life, I have to tell you.
What a way to learn though.
Oh, yeah, you learn the baptism of fire it was. So it was very interesting. So The business evolved. We grew into it. We planted the vineyard, and we established. The vineyard was only small when we bought it, so we evolved the vineyard. We built the cellar door. So being here, we've established this. So my passion was winemaking. I worked with my grandfather when I was 12 years old, washing bottles, and that was how I started. We had a bottle shop. We had barrels, and the people used to come in the shop, and there was no RSAs. There was no rules or regulations. If you were a family person, you worked in the family business.
Yeah.
So I was behind the counter filling quarter of a gallon jars of wine or 1 gallon jars of wine out of the barrels, putting a cap on it, putting a brown paper bag and serving customers.
Wow.
So I grew up with the wine business. So when you're young, you're full of beans. So I thought, we're going to export. So I spent 30 years running around the world exporting.
Hold that thought, Rex. Sounds like there's a story there. More on that later. You're watching the Cellar Door Australia. Today, I'm in Orange, where I'm catching up with third-generation winemaker Rex DeQuino. Growing grapes in a cool climate isn't easy, so Rex is taking me for a tour through the vines for a closer look.
You can't make good wine from bad grapes.
That is true.
That's it. So this is where the quality starts.
Yep.
So we'll handpick these for our premium wine. Machine harvesting's still good, but you've got to be careful how you do that. And then you've got to, if you machine harvest, it's got to be in the winery quickly. So we'll machine harvest at night, be in the winery in the morning. Well, grapes will still be cold and they'll be processed while they're cold. That saves good. But if they get hot during the process, you can have some off flavours coming in the fermentation. So that's very important. So hand picking is very expensive, probably 10 times more than machine harvesting. Yeah. But if you're producing a premium quality wine, it's much more gentle on the grapes. And in the big vineyards in Australia, they have big machines go through. And in the real commercial vineyards, they prune by machine, give it like a haircut, and then every second or third year they might thin it out because you get lots of little shoots, but it's more commercial. But these small vineyards have very high cost inputs, high labour inputs to keep it going.
Yeah.
So this is the peak of the tour.
Yes.
Here we have our #1 Patrono Pinot Noir. This is our top wine.
Oh.
And here we have the grapes that went into the wine.
Wow.
This is paddock to plate.
Yes.
So we're growing the grapes here. You give them a bit of a squeeze and they turn into wine.
Just a little bit of a squeeze, that's all you do.
Just a gentle squeeze.
What are you looking for in a grape when you know it's ready to?
Oh, well, these are still too green. You'll pick them and you'll taste them.
Yep.
We'll check the sugars and the acidity, so we'll do some analysis on them. So when we get closer to vintage, which is probably 6 weeks' time,
6 weeks.
we start to taste them. We'll do a bit of analysis and then we'll see when we're happy with the structure. So we look at acidity, sugar and flavour.
Okay.
They're 3 things we look at, and they've got to be clean too. So these are nice tight bunches, well set, clean, hanging out in the weather. So we've got good airflow.
Yeah.
Disease will be less because you've got the airflow. Plenty of leaf cover so they get ripe. So these are all looking good. And nice spread crops. Yeah, it's all nice and even.
Yeah.
That's very important.
What's also very important is that I get a chance to taste some of Rex's wines. So back into the cellar door we go. Right, well, all of that talk has got me a little bit thirsty. So what do we have here?
This one we're looking at the moment is our Highland Heritage Mount Canobolas dry Riesling. So for a wine to be dry, it's less than about 5 grams per litre of sugar. It's still called a dry wine in Australia.
Okay.
So the dry Riesling, the Mount Canobolas label is named after this vineyard. This is called the Mount Canobolas Vineyard. And the reason it's a Mount Canobolas Vineyard because from here you can see Mount Canobolas. Now the feature of Orange is Mount Canobolas is the highest point between here and the West Cape of South Africa. It's about 1,700 metres above sea level and it collects all the cold air. And so Orange at 890 up to Mount Canobolas is 1750 I think it is. So it's quite a range of climates. So this vineyard here, being on the eastern side of town, there's only 4 vineyards on the eastern side of town. This vineyard's very cold and that's why whites are very good and Pinot Noir is very good, but some of the later ripening varieties like Shiraz don't always ripen on time, and so as I said before, we make rosé.
Yeah.
We don't make a wine. So we're very important that we grade our wines according to the label. So this is our middle range wine, Mount Canobolas.
Lovely.
So when you smell it, this is a 2019 vintage. You start to get some of the older honeyed characters of an aged wine, so it's now nearly 5 years old. So it's starting to show some structure. And it's, when you taste it, you'll find it's crisp and clean finishes. There's no wood in this wine. It's made fresh in the stainless steel tank and bottled young. The screw cap, as was developed in New Zealand and in Australia, it keeps the wine very fresh.
Smells amazing.
So finish is clean, slight honey character, it's got a little bit older, very drinkable, drinkability.
Very drinkable.
I can tell you all about wine, spruik the virtues of wine, but at the end of the day, if you don't like it, there's two wines, the one you like and the one you don't.
So true.
Doesn't matter what I tell you, you just tell me if you like it or if you don't.
Quite simple, really. I like that philosophy. I wanted to find out from Rex a little bit more about how Orange differs from other wine regions in Australia.
Every region in Australia has its own idiosyncrasies and its own microclimates. Orange is a genuine cold climate region, and the fruit we grow here indicates the quality of the wine we grow. So if you can't grow good fruit, you can't make good wine. So being a food basket, Orange has stone fruits, it's got a history of grazing, apples. A lot of migrants came out here and had orchards. So it's got a history of growing good quality produce. The problem in Orange is in winter it's very cold. So you've got quite a short growing season in summer and autumn. And here in the vineyard, this is one of the coldest vineyards in Orange. And one of our early problems was we get frosted. So we get early frosts, which damage your fruit. And the way that works is when you get cold air and you get frost, the water moisture in the vine freezes. And when water freezes, it expands, and it's the expansion of the water that damages the cell structure in the vine. So if you get a frost early in the season, you get no fruit. So what we've done here in this vineyard, we have a water sprinkling system. And it works on the principle that water is warmer than air. So when we get a frost, the sprinkler system comes on, sprays the vineyard with a amount of water, and that water actually freezes over the vine. And you'll come in the morning, there'll be icicles over the whole vine. But the freezing of the water is it's called an exothermic reaction, and it releases heat. So when water freezes, it releases heat. The warmth goes into the vine and protects the vine from freezing. So then when the sun comes up and it warms up, that water melts off and the vine's safe. So sometimes in the early season, we'll get 9 or 10 frost events. So we can empty a dam pre-season before we even start irrigating. But if we didn't do that, in this vineyard, 9 years out of 10, we'd get no grapes. It's just a really cold. So this is probably one of the coldest vineyards in Orange.
So in essence, cool climates slow down the ripening process of grapes, allowing them to develop more complex flavours and higher acidity, which are ideal for producing high-quality wines. Nestled in the heart of Orange, the Oriana Retro Hotel and Resort is just that. 4.5 stars of award-winning accommodation and dining experiences unlike any other. Soak up the relaxed vibe of the garden kitchen with its martini bar and pool club. Retreat to the luxury of your room with the fluffiest pillows your head will ever lie on. It's all here waiting for you at the Oriana Retro Hotel and Resort. To book your stay, visit orianaorange.com. You've been in the industry for so long. That's no dig on your age, I'll tell you that. But I'm interested to know what your experience of seeing the Australian wine industry way back when you started to what it's become now.
Well, they grew grapes in Orange in the 1890s, and they were more table grapes like muskets, those sorts of things. But there was wine made, and they made jams, they made all sorts of things. But the new era of winemaking in Australia, I think, is the late 70s, early 80s it started, where the world found Australia. When I first started travelling overseas with my export, we had a presentation of Australia on a map, where it was in the world, kangaroos and koalas, and people didn't know where Australia was. It was just amazing. And we'd do presentations, and the first thing I know is Australia got kangaroos. Yeah, we've got all that sort of stuff. And we told them about what it was and the styles of wine. They knew nothing about Australia. So we started doing that. But now Australia globally as a wine region is very well known. I learned a lot about people, I learned a lot about business, and taught many people around Australia about wine. One of the things that I did was that we had a brand in Russia called Wallaby Creek, and I went to Russia in 2004, not long after they came out of communism. And in that time, it was just like the Dodge City of the West. It was an amazing place. So I went there selling wine, ran around the countryside. We had the biggest wine company that we dealt with. It was just by accident we found them at a trade fair. They came to us. 12 months of a negotiation, a couple of trips to Russia, and off we went. And we had the largest brand in Russia for quite a number of years of Australian wine called Wallaby Creek.
Wow.
So that was part of my travelling around the world, and that was an amazing part. My grandfather came in 1946, as I said, and my mother came to help him. So imagine 1946 here, dirt roads, 4 or 5 hours from Sydney, single lane roads. So if you talk to my mother, she's 88. So you talk to her about anecdotes, she said she cried for the first year because they lived in Sydney. She lived at Bondi and she came to Orange. And if you talk to her, I cried for a year, but then she got over it. And that's you know, and you know, you imagine my grandfather came to Australia in 1919. So they come from the other side of the world. They don't speak the language. They get dropped off. He thought he was in America and then up in Australia. So he stayed in Australia. And, you know, we know a lot about the world, but even now, knowing about the world, if you turn up in a foreign country, say you speak Russian or Chinese, you turn up, you've got no money in your pocket, you can't speak the language, and you start a new life. Like, imagine.
It's incredible. Even just that journey from Sydney, like you said, going
just
over
coming
the
over the mountains to Orange was like...
It's enough.
That's right. Now we have a new road. You can get here in 3.5 hours quite comfortably.
Yeah.
It's all bitumen. You come into the vineyards, you know, it's air conditioned, you got cement roads, it's all pretty. It's all changed. The people you meet and the experiences make the whole thing. The winemaking becomes secondary at some point because we all make good wine. There's no bad, you don't get bad wines in Australia anymore. It's just all different styles and where you want to go and what you want to drink, and sometimes you drink this and sometimes you drink that, but there's never a bad wine.
And on that perfect note, time for one last stroll through the vines.
So if you taste that, it's quite acidic because it's still green, even though it's purple. It's got a lot of acid.
It does
There's
have
sugar
a lot of
there in the
acid.
background. Where you've got acid. And when you bite the skin, you've got the tannin. So that in a grape, in red wine, the colour and the tannin comes from the skin. And you don't want to crush the seeds because the seeds are bitter.
Yes.
So you have very gentle harvesting. And then Pinot Noir, it sits in, you'll crush it, it'll sit in a tank for quite a few days because you soak it. That's part of them. And then you have hot ferments that get the flavour out of it. It takes a lot. You got to work it. Pinot, you work really hard to get the colour and the flavours out of it. Whereas Shiraz there's so much colour and flavour in Shiraz, it just jumps.
And how many varieties are you growing here?
So the furthest variety is Shiraz. Then we've got Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Sauvignon Blanc on the other side. And then we've got Riesling, Merlot, more Sauvignon Blanc down the cold section because it ripens a bit earlier.
Yeah.
And we've got some Prosecco on that side.
Wow.
And we've got a very small planting of Cabernet Franc for blending. It's only about 3 years old. That's down the bottom here.
So you've got some big plans for that?
Should go into our premium blend. So the next stage is we'll do a blend where we have 2 or 3 varieties in the blend, and that way we can step up the quality again, gives a bit more flexibility, and we'll have another premium wine which we'll call something else. That'll be like a benchmark wine.
Well, I'm going to leave you guys here while Rex and I go for a bit more of a wander.
Check out the grapes.
Let's go. As we bid farewell to the stunning landscapes of Orange and the historic Highland heritage, we leave with a deeper appreciation for the artistry and hard work behind every bottle. Well, it's been a pretty amazing day, and I'm here to top it off with a cocktail by the pool. We'll see you next time on the Cellar Door Australia.